Hey everybody, I'm gonna do an exceptionally short live stream here today from the Northwoods in the field of Wisconsin. Maybe just a quick little bitch. Speaking of little bitches, there's a guy named Preston Cooper who writes from time to time for Forbes magazine. He calls himself a conservative, but that's not true, and Preston knows it's not true. Preston and his little buddies, Jason Delisle, and I would sadly have to include in that people like Mark Kantrowitz, they bend over backwards trying to claim that the president doesn't have the power to cancel student loan debt. So the most recent argument that they're trying to throw up there and see what sticks, they point to the fact that Congress has created loan cancellation laws for people with disabilities, for people with no ability to benefit, the public service loan forgiveness program. Congress created all of those things. So therefore, the president cannot cancel student loans by executive order. Sorry guys, it's, pardon my French, bullshit. The fact that Congress has created loan cancellation legislation has nothing to do whatsoever with the secretary and by extension the president's power to cancel student loans. The fact that Congress has passed laws calling for various types of loan cancellation, if nothing else, that's really more of an illustration of how terrible the Department of Education has been over years and decades. The fact that Congress has to pass legislation calling for loan cancellation of one form or another really just undergirds the fact that the sort of for-profit culture, the corporate lender culture that has overtaken the Department of Education for the past decades now is just disgusting. But that has nothing whatsoever to do with the statutory language in the Higher Education Act, which gives the Secretary and by extension the President very clear, broad authority to cancel federally owned student loans. That's just the way it is. And this joker, Preston Cooper, who calls himself a conservative, he is a great liability to the GOP as a practical matter. I mean, look at Georgia, right? Georgia is a red state. Student loan debt exceeds the entire Georgia state budget. In the last election, all the Democrats had, at least on paper, they were promising the sun and the moon. It sounded good. And lo and behold, the Democrats sweep that election, both Senate seats and the president election. So these yahoos like Preston Cooper pretending to be conservatives, but in fact fighting for the worst big government, college enriching, which conservatives claim to not like, red state wrecking, lending behemoth that is a product of the swamp, that any conservative can call himself a conservative and do those two things at once. It defies everything. Preston Cooper is a jackass. Quite frankly, I think he's a young guy. He's going through the rites of initiation that you have to go through as a young conservative, and you have to do some of the dirty work that nobody else wants to put their name on. I think that's kind of what it is. But he ought to be ashamed of himself and go to our Twitter feeds, Twitter Student Loan Just #1. You will see a couple of choice tweets that we made for Preston. And truly, guys, conservatives everywhere need to be distancing themselves from this lending failure. There's nothing that any conservative, any true conservative, could say that's good about it. So, Preston Cooper, shame, 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 beyond shame. You're ridiculous. Liability to the GOP and to conservatism generally. Mark Kantrowitz, same comment. I don't know if Mark thinks of himself as conservative, but Mark is fighting tooth and nail for the swamp. I don't think you want to die on that hill, Mark. I think you better get straight, and I think you better start looking at common sense here. We are looking at a catastrophically failed lending system. And remember, Mark Kantrowitz, you took the lion's share of the credit for the public service loan forgiveness program. You had 10 years of monitoring this program, you knew at least 5, if not 6, 7 years ago that almost nobody was going to get this loan forgiveness. You knew that what is happening today, the 98.6% rejection rate, was coming, and you did nothing. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, buddy. So anyways, go to our Twitter, like and retweet the crap out of that tweet. Send it to every conservative you can think of, all the networks, Newsmax, Fox News, Tucker Carlson, whoever. And let's blow this little rinky-dink log that's floating around in the DC swamp. Let's blow it up and sink it, guys. We have the power. We've got the numbers now. We've got an army of muscle to flex. So make it happen. And I'm going to leave it there at that. Make it happen. Peace out.